The problem that we face in America is that our thinking is so short-term that people in politics that rise to positions of power and political power, they have to think in terms of 1 year or 2 year time frames, election cycles, etc., etc. So they don't have the space to kind of create an overall vision of where this country should be headed. A lot of the problems that we're facing in politics stem from the public, stem from our short-term attention spans, stem from social media that's kind of continually roiling us up, and we're locked in the moment.
I don't know if you had a chance to read Destined for War by Graham Allison. I don't know if you would recall that book. He was the dean of the Kennedy School. When I had the opportunity to interact with President Xi's team from China, this is going back to the transition, President Xi brought that book with him to Mar-a-Lago in April of 2017.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And so I had the opportunity to have read the book prior. So I was one of the people, at least in the administration, that was conversant in the book. What was the book about? There were 16 episodes throughout modern history,
right,
where a rising superpower was threatening the existing power structure. Of course, in those 16 episodes, 12 of them ended up in war. The ones that didn't, there was understandable reasons. You know, when Great Britain was in decline, but America was rising, there were enough of, in terms of kissing cousins, they had the same sort of system, the same common law inheritance from Great Britain, sort of kissing cousins, if you will. So the British were more easily and readily acceptable of the American rise. But now you have religious differences, you have economic differences, you have political differences in terms of an open system versus a closed system, and you have one power rising, threatening the existing power structure. Some of the stuff that's going on in the Ukraine is a signal, frankly, to the Chinese from the West. So. So we both realize that. And so, you know, my position has always been that we need a transformative Western leader that's able to distill these elements of what I'm discussing with you, and then to help the West, to guide and lead the West as opposed to react to what's going on, to lead the West to better decision-making and almost remake and force a reordering of things. And again, not a new world order in the conspiracy sense of the nonsense on the web, but just to say, okay, what if we were coming out of war right now in 2022? How would we remake the world, okay, to forge a newer, fresher post-World War II order, if you will? Because unfortunately, the artifice of the post-World War II order, the acronyms of all these you know, the IMF, the UN, all the World Bank, all of these different things, they've had a good role, NATO, but we need a different rubric now. We need a different footprint. Yeah. It would require a Western leader to see that, to push that, and then to sell that not only to other Western leaders, but to the populations in the West, to recognize, hey, we may have to give a little here to India or China. We may have to give a little on the fringes of what we're doing in order to make sure that we can guarantee another generation or 3 or 4 generations of peace. So you get all of this. So this is why I was so fascinated and want to talk to you. How do we get better leadership, sir? How do we get better leadership in the areas where we need it?
Wow. These are big questions. Well, you know, there is a maxim that we often get the kind of leadership that we deserve. You know, so the problem that we face in America is that our thinking is so short-term that people in politics that rise to positions of power and political power, they have to think in terms of 1 year or 2 year time frames, election cycles, etc., etc. So they don't have the space to kind of create an overall vision of where this country should be headed. The kind of vision that, you know, that Kennedy might have had when he launched the New Frontier, or Roosevelt with the New Deal, where you're looking at something, you're looking at problems, and believe me, we have plenty of problems here, and you're going, this is how we can solve them in a 4 year or an 8 year time frame. We need to be patient. We need to do this, that, and the other. So a lot of the problems that we're facing in politics stem from the public, stem from our short-term attention spans, stem from social media that's kind of continually roiling us up, and we're locked in the moment. And it's hard to have leaders who can step out of that and who can say, all right, first of all, one thing that I always wish a politician would do today would be to say, what does it mean to be an American right now? What is our country? Who are we at this point in our history? Maybe like you were saying, we need to reevaluate the world order like that happened after World War II and NATO. Well, maybe we need the same reassessment about our own country, etc. But to sort of articulate a vision of where we're going, of what you see this country should be in the next 4 or 5 years or so, is extremely difficult. We don't give any of these people the space to initiate that kind of longer term thinking. And it's not only in politics, it's in business. I served on the board of directors of a publicly traded company, American Apparel, and I saw firsthand how this operates in business, where your attention is continually focused on the quarterly report, on how Wall Street is viewing you, on the optics of this and the other, of how much growth there is. And so to sort of step back and say, this is where the company should be in a couple of years. These are times where things are changing so quickly that you need a leader who can say, this is where our business should be going to kind of navigate all these changes. It's absolutely impossible given the pressures that leaders now face in business, in politics, or even in sports or everywhere. Shorter and shorter attention spans. So it's almost like we have to re-engineer human nature right now. We have to become more patient, more willing to have leaders who can say things that will displease us in the moment, who will say, yes, our country is going bankrupt in a few years, so we need maybe make some cuts here or there, to give us some pain, to deliver us some painful messages that we can accept. So it's a real problem.